Welcome to topic 1 of managing a web server. This topic is web server concepts. Web server. The primary function of a web server is to store, process and deliver web pages to clients. The communication between the client and server takes place using HTTP. Sometimes, and which is most of the case these days, it would be HTTPS, which we can tell by the little padlock in the address bar. Now, pages are delivered most frequently as HTML documents, although web pages often contain PHP and JavaScript as well. So this leads to the question, what is HTTP? The Hypertext Transfer Protocol is a protocol that allows web pages to be marked up and interpreted by browsers, and those web pages are often stored on web servers. Communication between client computers and web servers is done by sending HTTP requests and receiving HTTP responses. So here's a HTTP request response. Communication between clients and servers is done by requests and responses. So firstly, a client, the browser, okay, the browser on your phone or the browser on your laptop, sends an HTTP request to a web server. And that might just be to look up a local takeaway menu, or to look up a bus time, or to go on to Tesco's website to find out what time they close at, because perhaps because of the lockdown they're closing early or something along those lines. So a web server, which is owned by the organization whose website you're visiting, hosts the web page, and it receives a request and it returns an application to process the request. It runs an application and then it returns the HTTP response, the output, back to the browser. And then your browser on your phone receives that request and displays it to you. So HTML, the standard markup language for creating web pages. So HTML is not the only markup language. There are other markup languages around there. LaTeX is a markup language for formatting documents. Groff is a markup language for formatting man pages. You can do some quite clever things with Groff. Also, we get other types of markup languages in forums. You'll often see if there's ways to insert code or to quote people, and it will say, you know, use markup, and there'll be a few tags you can have. So HTML describes the structure of a web page, and that structure is represented inside little tags. And I'm going to give you an example here of a simple web page. So in HTML5, we always start a page with this at the top, doc type HTML. That can actually be in lowercase, but often you'll see it in uppercase. Then each tag is opened by representing it between these two greater than, less than signs, and is closed with the same output, just has this slash at the beginning to end it. So everything that's opened must be closed. So we have the body of the page opens, and inside there we have some H1 stands for the biggest heading. You get H1 through H5, I think, for heading levels. And then P stands for paragraph, and we put in my first paragraph there. So that's a very simple page. You could type that out in a text editor, save it as mypage.html, and then open it with your browser, and it would display. And that's something we can do, we can look at later. So what happened a long time ago, probably let's say the mid-2000s, so around about 15 years ago now, when you used to make a web page, you used to have to define lots of things in here, like what color is the text, what font is it going to be. And you can imagine on a very large website, like let's think of a big news website like the BBC or the Guardian, the HTML would be an absolute mess because you're constantly defining colors and styles of fonts and things. So this is why CSS was invented. So HTML was never intended to contain tags for formatting a web page. It was only meant to describe the layout and content of a web page, headings, paragraphs. Tags like the font and the color used to be added into the HTML page. And in developments of large websites, the HTML code became an absolute mess. So to solve this, the World Wide Web Consortium, the W3C, created CSS. And CSS is a language that looks like this. So what you have is you have an element here that's defined, and then open curly brackets, close curly brackets, the name of what you're defining, and then some sort of description here. So what we're saying is we're creating a CSS class, it's called body, and then inside the body we're saying that the background color of the body is going to be light blue. So that's just a simple CSS. Then down here we've got H1. We're saying H1's color is going to be white and text align will be center. So when we call H1 in our web page, it's going to use these attributes here. Okay, and we'll look at that a little bit more detail as this course progresses. So that's HTML and CSS. CSS is for describing how things should look and what they should be like. HTML is for formatting the layout of the page. And then we have PHP. So PHP is an actual programming language in itself, the pre-hypertext processor. And PHP is the most widely used server-side scripting language. So things like Facebook and Wikipedia rely very heavily on PHP. And PHP files can contain text, HTML, CSS, JavaScript. The key thing to understand about PHP is that PHP is interpreted on the server, not by your browser. Okay, and then we've got some more, an example here. This is a JavaScript example. So the final piece of technology I want to talk about is JavaScript. JavaScript is the programming language of the web. So when you go onto a website and there's like slidey things happening and fancy things moving about on the page, usually that's JavaScript that's doing that. So JavaScript is interpreted on the client side. So when you look at a page on your phone browser interprets the JavaScript. That's why JavaScript is called the programming language of the web, or the programming language of the browser. So the difference between JavaScript and PHP is that PHP is interpreted on the server side, it's called. JavaScript's interpreted by the browser, or client side. Right, so in summary, we have HTML to define the content of web pages, CSS to specify the layout of web pages, PHP for server-side scripting, JavaScript to program the behavior of web pages, and HTTP, which is the protocol used to exchange web pages between servers and clients. And HTTPS is just HTTP, but with some added security with a certificate. So that's the kind of introduction topics there. Now we're going to move on to the operating system we're going to use in this subject, Debian. Why Debian? It's a free operating system, and these operating systems here, Ubuntu, Kali, Raspbian, I think it's called Raspberry Pi OS now, MX Linux, Linux Mint, Tails, are all based on Debian. So rather than using Kali or using Ubuntu, I always think it's better just to use the thing that these are based on and just use actual Debian. So who's using Debian? Let's go forward and I'll take you to this page to show you all there's some examples of who's using Debian here. All of these people here, all of these institutions are using Debian, lots and lots of them. So I'm going to stop this for questions now, and I'll stop the recording. So let's just do, so, just started with so again. I need to stop saying so. I've got this piece of paper written down here that says, stop saying so on it.
Out of curiosity, why do you need to stop saying so?
It just annoys me because I go back to videos that I've recorded and I start every single paragraph with the word so. It just seems...
Yeah, I'm just curious. I don't mind. I'm fairly sure no one else in the chat.
No, it's annoying
So
me though. It's personally
I was just
annoying.
wondering.
Well, it's a pointless word. It doesn't mean anything. It's useless.
Yeah, but there's many words in English that are completely pointless just to allow you to open up a statement.
I know, but I should be able to start things without saying
it's to rev up the brain motor.
Yeah,
I know.
The brain cells.
Just need to stop saying so at the start of everything. So, you know, it just doesn't really mean anything, does it? So I'm trying to work. I'm trying to get it off my trying to get off my Christmas card list, if you know what I mean. Right. Let's move on to this part then. I would hope that you can see VMware, where we created our Windows virtual machines earlier. So this time I'm going to create a Linux virtual machine and show you how to do the basic setup. So in this setup, we're going to go custom and we're going to choose workstation 15. But this time, again, choosing I'll install the operating system later. Instead of choosing Windows, we're going to choose Linux, and we're going to change the Linux version, scroll, to Debian 10.x 64-bit. So Debian 10.x 64-bit, and then click Next. Now, again, I want you to browse to a sensible folder that you've made. Don't save it in your pictures and call it, untitled1 _1 brackets 1. Okay, so let's save it in a managing the web server folder there, and give it a sensible name. I'm going to call it Debian 10 64-bit managing a web server. All right. Now, the requirements are very low for this. Leave it on one processor, one core. And just to speed up the installation, I'm going to put it on 4096 meg of RAM. Leave it on that. Leave all this stuff default. And let's create a new virtual disk and store it as a single file and 20 meg. It'll not be 20 meg, it'll be about 3 meg, but leave it on 20 just in case. And that's an absolutely fine name for it as well. Just make sure it's going into the right folder. It is. And then again, customize hardware. We don't need a sound card because it's a web server. We don't need a printer either. And click finish. And this should give us a new virtual machine here. And then if we just edit the virtual machine settings and go to the CD drive, we choose use ISO image, and we're going to look for the ISO image, which I have put someplace to be very organized. Tell me I've put it here, and I will pause the recording now until I find where I put the ISO. Let's do resume. Right, so a very good thing to know about when you very first start a Debian virtual machine is it's going to make a beep noise, I'll bet. So let's just start this and see what happens. Round about now. There you go. That, I don't know why, it always does that. Always does that. So now you can actually install Debian with speech synthesis. I've never seen anyone do it before, and I'm not going to try and do it now. But if you were really bored, you could look into how to install it by talking to it with a microphone. But for our purposes, if we just choose graphical install, and then so someone in the chat saying that they've attempted it with speech synthesis. But have you attempted it with speech synthesis in, let's look for a particularly Tibetan? No, never tried it in Tibetan or Tagalog or...
I'm pretty sure you have pronounced that Tibetan.
Tibetan.
It is meant to be of the region of Tibet.
What did I say? Tibetan. Okay.
Yeah.
Or what about
I don't know. I'm purely going off of the name and house. So I could very well be wrong.
I'm pretty sure Klingon used to be in this list, but It doesn't seem anymore. I'll tell you what would be a particularly difficult language to install it in. Welsh. You can do it in Tagalog. Who can do it in Tagalog? Darwin. Right, that'll be an interesting class in itself. So, personally, whenever I install Debian, I just go for English. So let's just choose English here, and then now that's for the keyboard language. So you get the pound sign and the now graphical install. I'm going to stop the recording now and just talk to you about the lab, or let me just open up the lab. I think I've got it open here. So in today's lab, all you need to do is create a PDF that shows the main steps in performing this installation. I'm not going to take you all the way through it because I feel that it's very straightforward now. What to do if you don't know the answer to a particular stage in the installation. See how I did graphical install? I chose keyboard language, English, Great Britain. Just follow this, okay? This tells you exactly what to choose. And then once we have Debian installed, we're going to type this into the command line, apt install Apache 2. Now I'm going to share a terminal with you in a second. Let me just stop this share and open terminal, and we shall share a terminal. Here we go. Hopefully everyone can see this, but I'm just going to make the font a little bit bigger. Deja Vu Sans, let's turn that up to 23. Okay, so here I am logged into Debian in the terminal. Now, the first thing you need to do is type su space minus, and this will make you root, okay? You put your root password in, and then you'll see that the prompt will change from your user, which would probably be your name, John or David or Sarah, whatever your name is, Sarah Connor, to root here, okay? And then to install, so now that we're root, we can run commands. So to install Apache 2, we type apt, which stands for the Advanced Package Tool, I think. Install from the Advanced Package Tool. What do we want to install? Apache 2. Are we sure we want to install it? Yes. Okay. If you don't put the -y, in a couple of seconds when it downloads it, it'll say to you, are you sure you want to install? So you can override that by doing that. I don't know what the effect of overriding it doing that would be. I've never tried that one. Yes, install, no, don't. But that's it. So once you've done that, there are a couple of other steps in the lab, and that is it. Let me just stop this recording now, and we'll do some questions.